Hey, what's going on, guys? How is everybody doing? It's been a long journey, but the Geo God Rex Lapis himself has finally made it to Genshin Impact in all his glory and is ready to rain destruction on his enemies or solidify defenses for those you hold dear. Whether utilizing him as a main DPS or support unit, the God of Contracts will most definitely hold up his end of the bargain and provide optimal performance. We'll be talking about the stats you should be prioritizing, how to build your artifact sets, what weapons he will get the most performance from, and what talents you should focus on. We'll be judging these from a free-to-play level all the way up to an endgame primary hero. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Zhongli has been on a bit of a roller coaster the past couple months, going from the most underperforming and unsatisfactory hero to one of the most universal supports and being an extremely competitive main DPS. We can certainly say that he's been on a long journey. Zhongli's strengths lie in the fact that he is a very versatile hero. As a main DPS, we can focus on either physical damage through his auto attacks or geo damage to increase the DPS of his skill or burst. We can also build him as a support, focusing on his DPS through his burst, trying to get as much damage in an AoE as possible, or we can build him strictly for HP to get his shield as protective as possible, almost negating the need for a healer, though not entirely. He also has one of the most universal debuffs in the game, meaning that he isn't just good on physical teams or elemental teams, he's simply good. Enough said. And if that wasn't enough, he can also petrify enemies, freezing them in place. If he did have a downside, it would probably be either that his damage as a main DPS does get outclassed by other high tier carries, his skill damage isn't the greatest, though it's really the shield we care about, or that you may feel that you're being pulled in multiple different directions with him. Do you go full damage? Do you go full support? Or is a mix best? We won't be delving into that question in this video, but make sure that you do subscribe to the channel because that video is just around the corner and you certainly won't want to miss it. If you're using Zhongli as one of your main carries, you'll become quite familiar with his auto attack. While extremely flashy, it doesn't exactly scale the highest as he is part of the polearm class. He makes up for this though because of the short interval between attacks, which will synergize well with some of his best weapons. Upon activating Zhongli's skill, a Geopillar will rise up from the ground, creating a construct that can be used to block enemies, traverse difficult to reach places, create art, or what they're intended for, which is damage. The construct will deal AoE geo damage upon creation, and over time until it's destroyed, it will resonate to do further AoE geo damage within its, quite frankly, kind of small radius. While only one can be made at a time initially, through further constellations we can improve this to 2 at a time. Not only is 2 pillars twice the fun, they can also resonate with other geo constructs. So if you're using Zhongli with other geo heroes that also create constructs, like Albedo's Isotoma, if you place them close enough, the other constructs will also deal the same AoE geo damage. Zhongli's constructs will generate geo energy, but keep in mind, if you intend to use him as a geo battery, his energy generation is not consistent and is at best random, so it's not the best to rely upon it if, for example, you wanted to use him as a geo battery for, let's say, Noelle. On the upside though, if you hold this skill, that's where we get to the exciting part. Not only does he create a construct now, which is one of his new buffs, but he also creates a shield that scales off of his max HP. As a side note, doing this will absorb Geo Element from nearby enemies, which can be very useful at destroying certain shields. That aside, his shield is the most unique aspect, and it's what brings value to him as a support hero. Not only does the shield now scale 150% against all damage versus the 250% against specifically Geo damage that it used to, now it also shreds the enemy's resistance to physical and elemental damage by 20%. This is huge! Normally, with effects like this, we see one or the other. Superconduct and Jinyan's 4th constellation decreasing physical resistance, and Viridescent Veneer and Zhengqiu's 2nd constellations as examples. But Zhongli can now do both, which pretty much makes him a universal support as he brings along extra damage now, not just a big bulky shield. You can, however, only stack one of these effects at a time, so don't think that you can cheese this mechanic in multiplayer. His last attack talent, and easily my favorite, is his burst, where Zhongli rains a giant meteor from the sky and deals massive AoE geo damage. He also applies a petrification to enemies for a couple seconds so they can't move. But guys, he drops a giant rock from the sky. How cool can a hero possibly be? Zhongli level cool. That's how cool. Having only a 40 energy cost means that if you want to use Zhongli as a burst support and have him be your only Geo hero, you can do that pretty easily without any need for significant energy recharge investment. So if you like dropping rocks and hilichurls as I do, you can safely drop them all day long. Talent investing priority will vary heavily depending on your preferred playstyle. If you prefer to play Zhongli as a main DPS, focus on his auto attack first, followed by his burst. If you prefer to use Zhongli as a brick wall and have him shield all incoming damage, focus on his skill, then his burst. Lastly, if you're using him on a quick switch team and just want to get massive damage out of his burst, focus on that first, then his skill. In all cases though, this should come after getting all his talents to level 6. Just make sure that you have plenty of gold. And Mora. Just like Zhongli's skill, his passive abilities are part of his duality, one adding to his shield and the other to his sword, or polearm in this instance. His first passive fortifies his shield whenever it takes damage. For every instance, 5% capacity will be added up to 25%, furthering his fortification. And the other, his fourth Ascension passive, increases his damage of normal, charge, and plunge attacks, his skill damage, and his burst damage, all with percentages based on his max HP. So, while for most supports, it's recommended to keep them at level 60+, Zhongli is a support that's worth upgrading past that to take full advantage of his potential massive health pool. To ascend him, make sure you have plenty of Core Lapis and Slimes ready. Zhongli's Constellations, while not changing his kit in any way, pack a lot of punch and are really quite impressive. Constellation 1 increases the maximum number of constructs that can exist up to 2, allowing for more passive geo damage and energy regeneration. Constellation 2 creates a Jade Shield whenever Zhongli uses his burst. This opens up his support capabilities wide open, as now you don't need to activate 2 separate skills to both create a shield and do damage. It's all packed into one attack. Constellations 3 and 5 are typical skill and burst promotions. Constellation 4 both increases the area of effect of his burst and increases the petrification effect by 2 seconds. Lastly, Constellation 6 grants whoever is protected by Zhongli's Jade Shield 40% of incoming damage as HP. This constellation essentially turns Zhongli from a simple shield generator to a sub-healer as well. As we've already mentioned several times, Zhongli's kit is a tale of two styles, so we'll be making sure to keep his artifacts and weapons separate into his DPS and support builds. Firstly, let's take a look at his DPS artifacts. For starters, Zhongli's best set as a physical carry will be a 2-piece set of Bloodstained Chivalry and a 2-piece set of Gladiator's Finale. Now, on a hero like Razor, you'll often hear me say that it's actually 4-piece Gladiator's Finale that is a better option for a physical carry. However, because of Zhongli's best weapon in this role, that changes things a bit because of something Razor doesn't have access to, which we will get into once we take a look at weapons. That said, 4-piece Gladiator's Finale will work exceptionally well if you don't have this particular weapon, though it is quite a bit harder to farm. A close second to this would be 4-piece Retracing Bolide. Though your DPS won't be as high because you lose the 18% attack boost that benefits your skill and burst, you will have a bit more tankiness due to the increased shield strength. Just take note that the 2-piece Bolide set bonus only affects Zhongli, not your other teammates. Another interesting option we could take a look at are the 35% damage bonus elemental sets, Thunder Soother and Lava Walker. Though I think that Lava Walker is the weaker of the two given the heroes that we currently have access to. Thunder Soother with a hero like C6 Fischl is no joke and can actually out DPS a 4-piece Gladiator's Finale. But if you're caught without an enemy without Electro application, your DPS will surely suffer. So because of potential consistency issues, I wager that most players will probably stray away from this unless they already have a horde of artifacts that they can play with. As a support, our options are pretty easy. 2-piece Archaic Petra and 2-piece Noblesse Oblige is really our only decent option. We could of course go with a 4-piece set of either of these options, though since we'll most likely want to use Zhongli for big damage as opposed to a more utilitarian approach, I recommend players go for the 2-piece build. Looking at the individual stats of our artifacts, his DPS build doesn't change too much from what it previously was. An attack timepiece, physical damage cup, and crit circlet, either rate or damage, will provide Zhongli the biggest damage output. However, since Zhongli's damage does scale with HP now, is it worth it to run an HP timepiece over attack, since this will also increase his shield capacity? While this is true, it will result in an overall loss of damage, though it will increase his tankiness. Since his shield is already really powerful as it is, I would recommend sticking with an attack timepiece if you're using him as a carry. However, as a support, this changes. We still want a crit circlet, and instead of physical damage, we now want a Geo bonus cup to increase our burst damage, but now we do want an HP timepiece. We do lose out on damage as we did in the main DPS build, but as a support, that is not our main focus, and taking a slight hit in damage for more protection is overall more worth it for his supporting build. Keep an eye out for that full Zhongli breakdown video, as I'll be covering every combination of main stats here to further explain what his best combinations are. Now we come to Zhongli's weapons, and this is the main reason why Bloodstained Chivalry is so important to his main DPS build. A lot of you might have already guessed it, but it is because of the Crescent Pike. This weapon is, quite frankly, absurd on physical carries, especially as a craftable weapon. It outpaces the next two best in slot weapons by roughly 20% damage. If you aren't already familiar with this weapon, the added damage dealt from the passive is not added to the attacks Zhongli does, but instead is a separate hit, meaning that it can crit independently and it scales off of physical damage, which is the reason for Bloodstained Chivalry being so important over the 4-piece Gladiator set, since that set has no effect on this passive other than the 18% attack boost, which we already get from running 2-piece Bloodstained Chivalry and 2-piece Gladiator. The next two best weapons are Primordial Jadewing Spear and Staff of Homa. Skyward Spine and Vortex Vanquisher are also very good options, though the energy recharge substat is a bit lost on this build, and because of the added shield strength, Vortex Vanquisher loses out a bit of damage from balancing compared to more DPS focused weapons. For more budget friendly alternatives, Royal Spear, Deathmatch, and Blackcliff Pole will all be excellent alternatives. All of these weapons are incredibly close in performance and will not have a huge impact on your DPS if you choose to go with one over another, though it will change how you prioritize your crit stats. As a true budget option, White Tassel will be your best choice. Now, as for his best support weapon, I'm going to take a little bit of a leap of faith on this one and call that Staff of Homa is his best support weapon. As it stands, as of recording this video, stat-wise, it will be his best. That being said, the weapon has not been officially released yet and is subject to change, but barring any giant shakeups, the crit damage substat and increase in max HP from the passive, as well as the increased attack bonus based on the wielder's max HP, should prove to be a very powerful weapon, both in boosting his shield strength and overall damage. Next on the list though is actually Deathmatch, which does overtake Jade Spear as the crit rate polearm of choice because of the always active passive as opposed to the one you need to build up with the Jade weapon, though Jade Spear is a close third, followed closely by the other two 5-star polearms. For alternatives, should you be without a 5-star polearm, White Tassel is actually the best pickup for strictly damage. Though if you're able to build your crit rate quite high without the need of a weapon, Blackcliff Polearm will outperform it. Lastly, Black Tassel. While falling slightly behind the two previous weapons, it does come with an HP substat, meaning you'll see an increase of performance in your shields. So if you're okay with the loss in damage, Black Tassel is a fine alternative. And so now we come to our conclusion. That was certainly a long and strange journey we just went on, much like Zhongli to where he is now. A god in our eyes and a daddy in our hearts. No matter how you choose to play him, it's becoming more and more clear that he's to be a mainstay for the years to come. Hopefully you guys have found this guide useful and it will help you in building your own Zhongli. If you liked what you saw and want to see more content from me, head over to my Twitch page, twitch.tv/xjazzy, or you can support me right here on YouTube by clicking the red subscribe button, like the video if you liked it, and hitting the notification bell. That way you never miss a video. And if you want to join our community over on Discord, a link as always will be down in the description below. But guys, that's all I have for today. Hopefully you did enjoy, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.